Hi, Jeff. Welcome to Surgical Science.
Thank you so much. Really, really excited to be joining the team.
Great to have you. So, I've just got a few questions for you. And how do you think that coming together with surgical science have benefits for the customer?
I think it's going to be tremendous. First of all, the relationship we have with surgical science goes back well over a decade. We've actually partnered on sales and marketing events. We've shared booths together. Our cultures just really are similar. First of all, both companies are very focused on accurate physics and modeling, and I think we both have our strengths and weaknesses, but our strengths complement each other so incredibly well that I think we're just going to be able to bring so much more to our customers. We're going to be able to produce some joint technology that is just going to make our simulation that much more efficient, that much more realistic, and just play a much bigger role when it comes to preparing surgeons for the OR. One of the things that surgical science and Mimic share is how much we value validation and to show actual proof that not only does simulation training make you better, we can distinguish novices from experts. We can prove that the simulation will affect your performance in the OR and in some cases even really affect the outcomes.
Why do you think robot companies are investing in simulation and simulation training?
Well, obviously, Intuitive has been out for a while, and simulation wasn't available right when they launched their robot. But think about the new robot company that comes onto the scene, where in your first 100 cases or so, everything is going to be scrutinized in a very, very big way. This means there's going to be hyper attention on patient outcomes and efficiency. If a robot company has surgeons that do their very first cases and they're inefficient or worse, they make a critical error, it's going to receive publicity that could really, really damage the growth and adoption of their robot. So they have a very, very vested interest in making sure that every one of their surgeons is trained very, very well so that they have maximum efficiency and safety when entering the OR.
So, the demand for robot-assisted surgery, is growing massively in the last few years. How important do you think it is for objective quality training with surgical robots?
It's absolutely critical. The problem with training is that the robot itself is very expensive. There's a need for simulation in a manner that's very similar to flight simulation. However, if you take simulation and take the robot slave out of the picture and put simulation on the robot itself, so you're just using the console, or you create a simulator that can be moved out of the OR, then you have more efficient training. You no longer have the OR costs associated with training. You actually have a way to effectively measure somebody objectively in a way you really couldn't do with a cadaver or an animal lab. The biggest challenge is training time. Um, that's always the constant complaint. If you interview pretty much any resident leaving a robotics program, and there have been studies on this, over 90% of them say they are not prepared for robotic surgery. So the ability for somebody to train independently without proctor, without a robot setup team, and to be able to learn the functionality of the robot before you get into the OR is critical. And we simply have a lot of data that shows that if you put in substantial training on a simulator and you train to a level of proficiency, you're going to be so much more efficient and safer once you get into the OR.
There's going to be a growing range of platforms surgeons are going to be using. So, do you think there's going to be difficulties and challenges with training, being consistent with all these different platforms that are going to be available?
One of the greatest advantages of Mimic and Surgical Science partnering together is we've both had the good fortune to work with the vast majority of the companies that are out there. We really are able to now bring kind of a unified training experience to the customer. So they're going to be able to work with similar training content, similar scoring system. So when you're moving from one robot to the other, you're not trying to learn a whole new type of exercise. We have the opportunity to unify that across multiple platforms. And this is great for the hospital because it protects them from, first of all, the risk of an inexperienced surgeon harming a patient, using the patient as their learning curve, but also when surgeries are more efficient, a hospital stands to make more money. You know, even before COVID, I think one out of every five hospitals in the United States was losing money. So simulation really is not a cost. This isn't something that's just a nice to have to train when you want. If you put it into an actual program, it is an investment, and it's an investment where you can get a return.
How important do you think the role of data analytics is in surgical training?
I think it's critical. Matter of fact, I think data is really the future of medicine in a general sense. Right now, if you think about how training used to be done, everything was extremely subjective. Objectiveness is needed. And unless you're collecting data and doing really in-depth analysis on somebody's training, it becomes very difficult to know if somebody's moving up the learning curve. We can use our data analytics to really zero in on a trainee's challenges, and we can start customizing that training. We can customize that training so that we can get somebody to a level of proficiency as fast as possible. Getting the chance to use a simulator with really good data analytics to tell you where you are before you get to the OR is critical. First of all, if you know that how you stack up relative to the rest of the world and your ability, you yourself are going to be more confident and competent. And there is nothing worse than a surgeon doing a surgery for the first time who's nervous or who isn't confident in what they're doing. So there's a great opportunity to do analytics to make the training more efficient. I like to think that there's a day that all these great tools we have for evaluating somebody's training in a simulation environment and all the assistance that we give them, all the visual aids, all the guidance that we give. Well, right now that goes away the moment you get into the OR. So we need to somehow find a way to link these type of tools to the OR itself, because the reality is so much training still happens on patients in the OR. We need the same type of objective assessment in the OR as we do in simulation. So hopefully one day we're going to see sort of a continuation of the training that starts in simulation but continues into the OR itself.
Final question. What do you see for the future of mimic and surgical science?
Well, I think that the obvious big advantage is when we combine the types of technologies we have, now we're really going to have a much broader IP portfolio, a much broader product portfolio, the ability for us to work together to not only bring what I believe is incredible simulation technology, but also the data analytics. So I think we're going to be able to work together to bring not just a simulator to our customers that is much more superior to what they've seen 5 years ago or even 3 years ago, but also simulation that is going to have some data analytics behind it that will allow hospitals to make some really good decisions for the OR. So I really look forward to us bridging the gap between training that starts on a simulator all the way through training that should be continuous and adaptive once you're in the OR. We can review surgical performance in the OR and say, okay, this is where you're good, this is where you were weak, this is what we recommend for your follow-on training. I really, really believe that together we're going to be able to help surgeons reach this expert level in a handful of cases. And this is just really going to benefit everybody as discussed. It's going to be good for the patients. It's going to be good for the hospital because they can do more surgeries. They can do safer surgeries. And of course, this is going to be good for robot companies because there's going to be a greater demand for robots and the instruments that they use. So I really think the future is really bright. And together we're going to be able to do some pretty neat stuff that I think people haven't seen before.